Le 6 1944, the Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Staff Sergeant Francis Currey of the 120th Infantry Regiment stands in the pre-dawn darkness, listening to the rumble of German tanks approaching through the snow. He is 19 years old. The temperature has dropped to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. His unit has been overrun. Most of his friends are dead or scattered in the frozen woods. In his pocket, he carries a letter from his mother in Hurleyville, New York. She has sent him cookies for Christmas. They arrived yesterday, and he shared them with his squad. Now those men are gone. By all military logic, Currey should retreat, find a command post, regroup with friendly forces. Instead, he makes a decision that will earn him the Medal of Honor. He picks up a bazooka from a dead soldier, walks directly toward 5 German tanks, and opens fire at point-blank range. This moment, one young man against an armored column in the frozen darkness captures something essential about the American soldier of World War II. Something the German army never fully understood until it was too late. This is not a story about machines, though America built more tanks and planes than any nation on earth. This is not a story about strategy, though American generals learned to outthink the masters of blitzkrieg. This is a story about the men themselves, the farmers from Iowa, the steel workers from Pittsburgh, the store clerks from California, who crossed an ocean to face the most professional army the world had ever seen. This is the story of how they won, and more importantly, why they won. When the first American troops landed in North Africa in November 1942, the German High Command was not impressed. Wehrmacht intelligence reports described the Americans as enthusiastic but untrained, equipped but inexperienced. At the Battle of Kasserine Pass in February 1940, German forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel validated that assessment, inflicting over 6,000 American casualties and driving the Green troops back 50 miles in chaotic retreat. A captured German officer's diary from that battle recorded his observations with clinical precision. The American soldier fights bravely when he has superiority in numbers and equipment. When isolated or surprised, he becomes confused. His officers are learning, but they are not yet soldiers in the German sense. That officer was both right and catastrophically wrong. Right that the Americans were inexperienced. Wrong that inexperience was permanent. Private First Class John Basilone knew about being outgunned and surrounded. At Guadalcanal in October 1940, Basilone and his machine gun section faced a Japanese regiment attempting to overrun Henderson Field. For 2 days and nights, Basilone fought without sleep, repairing his M1917 Browning machine gun when it overheated, dragging ammunition through enemy fire, and holding a position that every tactical manual said was indefensible. When relief finally arrived, they found Japanese bodies stacked in front of his position. Basilone had stopped an entire regiment with 2 machine guns and 15 Marines. He received the Medal of Honor and could have spent the rest of the war stateside on bond tours. Instead, he volunteered to return to combat and died on Iwo Jima in 1940, still leading from the front. This pattern, ordinary men doing extraordinary things, would define the American war effort. But first, those ordinary men had to learn how to fight. After Kasserine Pass, something remarkable happened. The American Army did not make excuses. It studied its mistakes with scientific precision. General George S. Patton, brought in to restore morale and discipline, implemented ruthless training standards. Officers who failed were relieved. Tactics that didn't work were discarded. The army that emerged from the North African campaign was fundamentally different from the one that had stumbled into it. Technical Sergeant Jake McNeese from Oklahoma understood improvisation. A full-blooded Choctaw and leader of the Filthy 13, a demolition unit so rough that other paratroopers avoided them, McNeese and his men pioneered unconventional warfare tactics. They fought behind enemy lines with whatever weapons they could capture, sabotaged German supply lines, and operated independently for weeks without resupply. Their methods were so effective that they became the model for modern special operations forces. McNeese survived 4 combat jumps and countless firefights by understanding one principle: the rule book is a suggestion, survival is mandatory. By the time Allied forces invaded Sicily in July 63, German intelligence reports had changed their tone. A Wehrmacht assessment from the Italian campaign noted with concern, American coordination between infantry, armor, and artillery has improved dramatically. They learned from mistakes faster than we anticipated. They are becoming dangerous. But Sicily and Italy were merely preparation. The real test would come on the beaches of Normandy. The M1 Garand rifle weighed 9.5 pounds and fired a 30-06 Springfield cartridge from an 8-round en-bloc clip. General George Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. German soldiers called it that damned rifle because its semi-automatic fire gave American infantry a crucial advantage in firepower over the German Kar 98K bolt-action rifle. An American rifleman could fire aimed shots twice as fast as his German counterpart. In the close quarters fighting of hedgerows and towns, this meant the difference between life and death. Technical details mattered. The Sherman tank was inferior to the German Panther or Tiger in armor and firepower. American tankers knew this. They compensated with numbers, mobility, and combined arms tactics. For every Sherman destroyed, 3 more appeared. German tanks might win individual duels, but they couldn't win the war of attrition. First Lieutenant Audie Murphy understood firepower. The son of Texas sharecroppers, Murphy enlisted at 18 and became the most decorated American soldier of the war. Near Holtzwihr, France, in January 1940, Murphy's company faced 6 German tanks and waves of infantry. With his men retreating under overwhelming fire, Murphy climbed onto a burning tank destroyer, its fuel tanks liable to explode at any moment, and used its .50 caliber machine gun to hold off the German advance for nearly an hour. He killed over 50 enemy soldiers and directed artillery fire by field telephone while standing completely exposed. When the Germans finally withdrew, Murphy's legs were wounded and his ammunition was exhausted. He was 19 years old. The pattern was clear. Give American soldiers the tools and training, and they would find a way to win. June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach. The landing craft ramps dropped, and German MG-2 machine guns opened fire at a rate of 200 rounds per minute. Men fell before they reached the waterline. The beach became a killing ground. Within 30 minutes, the carefully planned operation had collapsed into chaos. Brigadier General Norman Cota, Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Infantry Division, landed in the 3rd wave and found men pinned down behind a seawall. German artillery was zeroed in on the beach. Every minute of delay meant more casualties. Cota walked upright through machine gun fire, rallying scattered groups of soldiers. His words became legendary. "Gentlemen, we are being killed on the beaches. Let us go inland and be killed. It was not eloquent. It was not inspiring in the traditional sense, but it was true, and it moved men to action. Small groups began to advance. Engineers blew gaps in the wire obstacles. Bangalore torpedoes cleared minefields. Slowly, painfully, the Americans clawed their way off Omaha Beach. By nightfall, they had a foothold. The cost was over 2,000 casualties, but they had done what German commanders thought impossible. Staff Sergeant Walter Ehlers of the 1st Infantry Division fought through Normandy with methodical precision. Near Goville, his squad encountered German positions that had stopped the advance. Ehlers personally cleared 4 machine gun nests with rifle fire and grenades, killed 9 enemy soldiers, and captured 1. When his own brother was wounded, Ehlers carried him to safety under fire, then returned to lead the assault. He earned the Medal of Honor and survived the war, living to age 92, forever haunted by the friends he'd lost. The hedgerows of Normandy were agricultural barriers that had existed for centuries. Earthen walls 6 feet high topped with dense brush, creating a maze of small fields perfect for defense. German troops could hide in one hedgerow and fire on Americans crossing the open field to reach the next one. Progress was measured in yards per day, and every yard cost blood. American ingenuity found the solution. Sergeant Curtis Cullen, a tank driver from New Jersey, welded steel teeth cut from German beach obstacles onto the front of his Sherman tank. The Rhino tanks could plow straight through the hedgerows instead of climbing over them, breaking the stalemate. Within 2 weeks, over 500 tanks were modified with Cullen's design. The Army gave him the Legion of Merit. His fellow soldiers gave him something more valuable. They survived because he thought of a better way. The breakout from Normandy came at St. Lo in late July. Operation Cobra began with 2,400 heavy bombers dropping 4,000 tons of explosives on a 5-mile front. The German defenders who survived the bombardment were physically and psychologically shattered. American armor poured through the gap. Patton's Third Army raced across France, liberating towns that had been under Nazi occupation for 4 years. For the first time, American soldiers saw what they were fighting for. French civilians lined the roads, cheering, crying, throwing flowers. Old men who had fought in the First World War saluted with tears streaming down their faces. Children who had never known freedom ran alongside the tank shouting, "Vive l'Amérique!" Private First Class Sylvester Herrera from El Paso, Texas, understood sacrifice. During the fighting near Merzwiller, France, Herrera's platoon was pinned down by German machine gun fire. Despite losing both feet to a landmine, Herrera continued to fight from his position, killing 2 enemy soldiers and covering his squad's withdrawal. He survived his wounds and became one of the first Mexican-American Medal of Honor recipients, proof that American courage came in every color and accent. As autumn rains turned the European countryside to mud, American forces pushed toward the German border. The enemy was retreating, but not defeated. And in the high command bunkers deep inside Germany, Adolf Hitler was planning one final desperate gamble. December 1944. The Ardennes Offensive, later called the Battle of the Bulge, caught Allied intelligence completely by surprise. Over 200,000 German soldiers and 600 tanks smashed into American positions in the pre-dawn darkness. The goal was to split the Allied armies, recapture the port of Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. The initial German success was stunning. Entire American units were surrounded. Communications collapsed. Roads became choked with retreating vehicles. Some units broke and ran, but others stood firm. At a crossroads town called Basilone, the 101st Airborne Division found itself surrounded by German forces. The Wehrmacht commander sent an ultimatum demanding surrender. Acting Commander Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe sent back a one-word reply that entered American military legend: nuts! Staff Sergeant Isidore Jachmann, a 23-year-old from Baltimore, understood what nuts meant. When German tanks broke through the perimeter at Flamieres, Jachmann grabbed a bazooka and ran forward alone through heavy machine gun fire. He destroyed 2 tanks before a 3rd tank shell killed him. His sacrifice bought time for his company to establish a defensive line and hold. He received the Medal of Honor posthumously. The 101st held Bastogne for 7 days in conditions that defied human endurance. Temperatures dropped below zero. Medical supplies ran out. Wounded men froze to death because there was no shelter. Food was rationed to 1 carry ration per day. Ammunition dwindled to critical levels. German artillery shelled the town around the clock, but they held. On December 26th, Patton's Third Army broke through the German encirclement. The speed of Patton's maneuver, pivoting an entire army 90 degrees in the middle of winter and driving through German lines, is still studied in military academies as a masterpiece of logistics and determination. Private First Class Vernon McGarity from Wright, Tennessee, exemplified the fighting at the Bulge. Near Crinkle, Belgium, McGarity's squad was hit by a German assault supported by tanks. McGarity took control of a caliber machine gun and held his position for 3 hours against repeated attacks. When the machine gun was destroyed, he fought with his M1 Garand. When he ran out of ammunition, he fought with grenades. He killed over 20 German soldiers and stopped the assault. The Medal of Honor citation called it conspicuous gallantry. McGarity called it doing my job. The Battle of the Bulge lasted 6 weeks and cost 80,000 American casualties, the bloodiest battle in U.S. Army history. But it cost Germany its last strategic reserve. The Wehrmacht threw everything into the Ardennes and lost. The road to Berlin was open. The 155mm long-tom artillery piece could fire a 95-pound shell over 14 miles with devastating accuracy. American artillery doctrine emphasized the time on target technique, coordinating multiple batteries to fire from different positions so all shells arrived simultaneously, giving the enemy no warning and no time to take cover. German soldiers feared American artillery above all else. It was everywhere, always responsive, and terrifyingly precise. In March 1940, American forces crossed the Rhine River at Remagen. When German engineers failed to demolish a critical bridge, engineers and infantry raced across under fire, establishing a foothold on the eastern bank. Within 24 hours, 5 divisions had crossed. The last natural barrier into Germany was breached. As American armies drove deeper into Germany, they began to discover something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They began to find the camps. Buchenwald, Dachau. Dozens of smaller camps and subcamps scattered across the collapsing Reich. The soldiers who liberated these places were not prepared for what they found. Nothing in training, no combat experience, no warning from intelligence could prepare a human being for the industrial machinery of genocide. Private First Class Harold Linepark of the 84th Infantry Division wrote in his diary after liberating a sub-camp, "We found rooms full of bodies, living skeletons who looked at us like we were ghosts. The smell, there are no words for the smell. I've seen men die in combat. I thought I understood what evil looked like. I was wrong." General Dwight Eisenhower, upon visiting one of the camps, ordered that every American soldier in the area be brought to see it. He ordered extensive photographs and films. He said, "Get it all on record now. Get the films, get the witnesses, because somewhere down the road of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened." Technical Sergeant Edward Carter Jr. understood fighting for something bigger than himself. An African-American soldier who had previously fought against fascism in the Spanish Civil War, Carter led a volunteer patrol near Speyer, Germany, in March 1944. When his patrol was ambushed, Carter was wounded 5 times, but continued to advance alone toward German positions. He killed 6 enemy soldiers, captured 2 more, and obtained crucial intelligence before collapsing from blood loss. Despite his heroism, systemic racism delayed his Medal of Honor until 1997, 52 years after his death. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Church bells rang across liberated Europe. In America, crowds flooded into Times Square. The war in Europe was over, but the cost had been immense. Over 405,000 Americans died in World War II, more than any war except the Civil War. More than 670,000 were wounded. Entire towns lost generations of young men. Gold Star mothers hung flags in windows, marking homes that would never be whole again. What made the American soldier effective was not that he was superhuman. He was not. He was scared. He made mistakes. There were moments of cowardice alongside moments of courage. There were failures alongside triumphs. But when the totality of the war is measured, the American soldier possessed certain qualities that proved decisive. He could learn. After Kasserine Pass, after every costly mistake, the American Army studied what went wrong and fixed it. German tactical doctrine was excellent in 1930, but it barely evolved by 1940. American doctrine in 1942 was mediocre, but by 1940 it was world-class. He could adapt. When the hedgerows stopped the advance, American soldiers invented the Rhino tank. When German 88 miniguns destroyed Shermans at long range, American tankers learned to fight at close range where numbers mattered more than armor. When traditional tactics failed, Americans improvised. He fought for something real. Not for conquest, not for empire, not for a dictator's delusions of racial supremacy. He fought to liberate people he had never met, in countries he couldn't find on a map before Pearl Harbor. And when he won, he went home. The men who survived came back to America and built the greatest period of prosperity in the nation's history. They attended college on the GI Bill. They bought houses in new suburbs. They started businesses. They raised families. They created the American middle class. Most didn't talk much about the war. Their children and grandchildren knew fragments. A medal in a drawer, a photograph in an album, occasional comments at family dinners that hinted at experiences too dark to share fully. But their legacy lives on. Every freedom we enjoy today was purchased by their sacrifice. Every peaceful day we live was made possible by their willingness to face horror so that others would not have to. The American soldier of World War II was not perfect, but he was good enough, and good enough was more than enough to save the world. To those who served, to men like Audie Murphy and Vernon McGarity, to those who came home and those who sleep in foreign soil, to the famous and the forgotten, we owe a debt beyond measure. This was their war. This was their sacrifice. This was their victory. And they were the greatest generation